You're exhausted, legs are burning, and you're dead last in a triathlon. Your 16-year-old son is watching from the sidelines. All you want to prove is you're not a total failure. But what if crossing that finish line, no matter how far behind you are, wasn't about winning at all? Welcome to That's Life, I Swear. This podcast is about life's happenings in this world that conjure up such words as intriguing, frightening, life-changing, inspiring, and more. I'm Rick Barron, your host. That said, here's the rest of this story. What I'm about to share with you stems from a book written by A.J. Jacobs. The name of the book is The Year of Living Constitutionally. Now, there's a passage from the book that talks about the wonderful feeling of finishing last in a triathlon. That's correct. You heard me right. However, I'm getting ahead of my story here. So, shall we start? A.J. Jacobs' ambition was modest when he enrolled in a triathlon that one summer. Far from aspiring to victory or even a respectable placement within his age bracket, his sole objective was to avoid the humiliation of finishing last. A.J. could tolerate being the last competitor, but, the thought of being the final participant to cross the finish line just filled him with dread. The prospect of enduring ridicule as a recipient of the booby prize haunted him. Memories of a childhood embarrassment resurfaced in his head when he was signing up for the triathlon. It was a time when he received a participation trophy in the 5th grade. The same day, he had a very unfortunate accident when he peed in his pants during a game of Newcomb ball and unsuccessfully tried to conceal it. Well, the stakes felt even higher this time, as he was participating alongside his teenage son, Zane. The thought of appearing as a complete failure in his child's eyes was just too much to bear. AJ was determined to prove himself capable, if not exceptional, in this athletic endeavor. Now, AJ was far from being very athletic, as a lot of us are. His exercise routine consisted of typing emails while strolling on a treadmill, and he found activities to keep his heart in shape thoroughly, very unappealing. Participating in any form of race seemed beyond his capabilities. However, that summer brought unexpected changes. Prompted by his wife's concern for his health and spurred by his son's ambitious suggestion, AJ found himself contemplating an endeavor he never would have imagined: signing up for a triathlon. His son's enthusiastic proposal left AJ feeling cornered. Declining seemed unthinkable, lest it conveyed the wrong message. Determined to follow through, AJ scoured the internet for an appropriate event. His search led to Manapozet Lions Club Triathlon in Massachusetts, about a 4-hour drive from their New York apartment. Now, the event, scheduled a few weeks away, seemed like a manageable goal. Now, in truth, the triathlon he discovered was far from the grueling task of endurance typically associated with such events. Marked as a sprint triathlon, it was in fact the minimum distance to qualify for the triathlon designation. The course comprised a modest quarter-mile swim, followed by a 12-mile bike ride, and then concluded with a 3-mile run. AJ and his son had but a month to prepare for their upcoming challenge. Zane was already in good form from his high school athletics, and he had a head start. AJ, on the other hand, struggled to adapt to a more active lifestyle. He reluctantly circled the Central Park Reservoir a handful of times and managed to squeeze in a few swimming sessions at the local Jewish community center. The night before the event, AJ and his son hopped into the family car and made the journey to the race location. As they maneuvered their bicycles through the staging area, AJ felt a wave of unease wash over him. As he looked around, he was surrounded by a sea of athletic physiques, their muscles clearly defined and toned. The array of high-tech gear was overwhelming, from moisture-wicked socks to buoyant wetsuits, and an abundance of specialized energy supplements. The level of preparation exhibited by the other participants was very intimidating. While trying to quell his rising anxiety, AJ attempted to reassure himself. He thought to himself, there's got to be others here in this crowd who are equally unprepared as I, or perhaps even less so. He found himself hoping for the presence of someone recovering from a recent injury, just to feel less out of place. As the race began, competitors entered the Atlantic Bay in pairs. The shock of the frigid water caught AJ off guard. When he entered the cold water, cold receptors very close to the surface of AJ's skin sensed that his skin had cooled quickly. He felt an initial gasp, followed by rapid, uncontrollable breathing, as well as an increase in heart and blood pressure. While in the water, he asked himself, "Why am I doing this?" AJ watched his son quickly pull away with powerful freestyle strokes, while he found himself resorting to breaststroke after a brief attempt at a more efficient style. Now, despite his struggle, AJ managed to navigate around the final buoy and return to shore. Though he found himself in the latter half of the pack, he was relieved to note that he wasn't in last place. "Yes, I'm doing this," AJ said. AJ transitioned to the cycling phase, hastily donning his helmet before embarking on the rolling backroad course. For the next 30 minutes, a chorus of "on your left" echoed in his ears as fellow competitors zipped past him. Though the overtaking cyclists attempted to maintain a neutral tone, AJ couldn't help but notice and detect a hint of satisfaction in their voices as they surged ahead. After completing the 12-mile ride, AJ guided his bike through the checkpoint sensors. While his position in the pack had slipped away, he still had a sense of relief that several participants still trailed behind him. The final leg of the race, the run, proved to be the most challenging for AJ. With no equipment to aid him, he was left to rely solely on his own 2 feet and determination. As he walked heavily along with an expression of pain on his face and panting, other runners continued to overtake him. Yet, he clung to the knowledge that he wasn't in last place. A glance over his shoulder revealed an elderly woman, appearing to be in her 70s, struggling just as much as he was. He silently vowed to maintain his lead over her, focusing on keeping his legs in motion. "I can take her," AJ said to himself. However, as the race entered its final mile, the sound of rapid footsteps approaching from behind shattered his resolve. The woman in her 70s had found an unexpected burst of energy. Bewildered, he wondered if her sudden resurgence was fueled by some secret energy supplement. He watched helplessly as she ran past him with ease, disappearing around a bend in the course, leaving him to contemplate the possibility of finishing last after all. Feeling a sense of absolute exhaustion, AJ found himself in a solitary struggle during the final stretch of the race. The course had largely emptied, save for a few persistent spectators who continued to offer encouragement with well-intentioned but somewhat patronizing cheers of "You got this," accompanied by the mind-numbing clanging of cowbells. Despite his fatigue, AJ stubbornly refused to surrender to walking, even though his current pace was likely slower than a brisk walk. Adding to his discomfort was the presence of a 4-wheeled reminder of his predicament, the official triathlon ambulance. It trailed just behind AJ, a constant companion, ready to intervene should he collapse. Its proximity was a stark reminder of his place in the race. When he finally crossed the finish line, the bitter realization hit him. He had placed dead last, 121st out of 121 participants. Now, his son was there to capture the moment on his iPhone, offering a warm embrace for his having finished the race. However, AJ's emotions were a tumultuous mix of embarrassment and frustration. In an attempt to salvage his pride, he launched into a litany of excuses. He complained about mechanical issues with his bike, problems with his swim goggles, and took issue with the relay format some participants had used. In his agitated state, he argued that dividing the events among team members wasn't in the true spirit of triathlon. Maybe he's got a point. As he continued to sulk over his performance, his mind churned with a cocktail of disappointment, self-justification, and lingering resentment. The triumph of completion was overshadowed by his fixation on finishing last, leaving him trapped in a cycle of frustration and excuses. Now, as the day progressed, the initial sting of his last place finish gradually subsided, replaced by an unexpected sense of accomplishment. Perhaps it was the effect of the celebratory champagne or the heartfelt words of his son, expressing joy at their shared experience, regardless of the outcome. Whatever the catalyst, by the time they returned to New York that evening, his earlier mortification had transformed into unconventional pride and a remarkable feat of mental reframing. He began to view his performance in a new light. He convinced himself that his true achievement lay not in his ranking, but in his refusal to give up. The fact that he had completed the course at all became a source of triumph. He no longer saw himself as a loser, but as a bona fide triathlete and a positive example for his son. AJ reflected on the qualities he had demonstrated: persistence and resilience. These, he decided, were far more valuable lessons for his child than any arbitrary ranking. He told himself that he had shown Zane the importance of effort over outcome, of perseverance in the face of adversity. Moreover, AJ began to reinterpret the nature of the competition itself. Rather than a race against other participants, he now viewed it as a personal challenge, a test of his own limits and determination. This shift in perspective allowed him to find meaning and victory in what he had initially seemed like defeat. In this new narrative AJ had constructed, finishing last was no longer a source of shame, but a testament to his character and a valuable life lesson shared with his son. The triathlon had become not just a physical challenge, but a transformative experience in perception and self-worth. As the dust settled on the day's events, AJ found himself reflecting on the broader implications of his shared experience. His son's performance had been commendable, securing a respectable mid-pack finish. Far from feeling threatened by his child's superior athletic ability, AJ was immensely proud of him. He found himself perplexed by tales of parents who felt diminished by their offspring's talents. In contrast, he took genuine pleasure in being outperformed by his child. Upon further contemplation, AJ began to see a certain nobility in his last place finish. He drew a parallel to the Tour de France, where the final finisher is always awarded the Red Lantern, a symbol of perseverance and determination. This comparison lent a new significance to his position in the race. As AJ pondered the day's events, he came to a realization about his own strengths. While he might not excel in swimming, cycling, or running, he possessed a remarkable ability to reframe narratives. This skill, he mused, could be more valuable in life than raw athletic talent. AJ's capacity to transform a seemingly disappointing outcome into a story of triumph and personal growth was in itself a form of victory. This ability to find meaning and positivity in challenging situations, he realized, was a powerful tool, one that could serve him well beyond the confines of any racecourse. In the end, the triathlon had become more than just a physical challenge. It had evolved into an exercise in perspective, resilience, and the power of positive reinterpretation. AJ's journey from last place to a place of pride demonstrated that sometimes the most significant victories are won not on the race course, but in the mind. So what can we learn from this story? What's the takeaway? AJ finished the race. He proved he was not a loser. After all, he was a triathlete and a role model for his son. Persistence and resilience. That's what he displayed. He demonstrated to Zane that not winning is okay, as long as you try your hardest. Additionally, he wasn't really racing against others. He was racing against himself. Well, there you go, my friends. That's life, I swear. For further information regarding the material covered in this episode, I invite you to visit my website, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, for show notes and the episode transcript. As always, I thank you for the privilege of you listening and your interest. Be sure to subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you soon.